It is 6 o'clock. We'll call to order the Plainfield Charter Township Zoning Board of Planning Appeals. The first order of business is the approval of the agenda. Are there any late additions, modifications that we need to entertain, Elizabeth or anyone?
None.
So move. Support.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We have the second item on the agenda for our review, the approval of the minutes from the June 2023. Is there any cause to read those minutes, or can we have a motion to adopt them as provided?
Motion is fine.
So moved. Support.
We have a motion, we have support. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. So the third item on our agenda are public comments for those that don't necessarily appear on the agenda. Is there anybody from the public wishing to make comments on items that aren't later forthcoming within the meeting? Hearing none, we will close the public comments meeting, and we are currently on track to best Mr. Coleman's best time. Commentary aside, we are to item 5, which is a variance request, and there's a public hearing associated with that. Carl, would you read the consideration for us?
Applicant James McLaughlin, project address 5520 Chauncey Drive Northeast, permanent parcel number 411024427004. Size of site approximately 1.13 acres. Zoning RE rural estate. Zoning ordinance section 3.01E5. Action requesting of the ZBA. The applicant is requesting a 29-foot variance to have a 24 by 24 carport structure placed 31 feet from the front property line, where 60 feet is required by ordinance.
Thank you, Carl. Since this is a public hearing, we will open up the floor to the public for any of the friends and neighbors in the community that would wish to raise a comment. We have some residents coming in late. We have just opened the public hearing. Anybody wishing to speak to this variance request is welcome to come to the podium, state your name and address, and ask questions or raise comments.
Can I speak? It's about.
You may.
Where am I? Okay, my name is Susie Austin. I live at 5357 Chauncey. I travel Chauncey to 7 Mile. I've gone by the site that they want. I don't even know the people. But I don't have any issue of where they want to put this building up on their site. Thank you.
Wishing to speak to?
Hello, my name is Brett Pulaski, and I live at 5501 Chauncey Avenue, Chauncey Drive Northeast, right across the street from James. And I have no problems where the placement of his carport's going to be. I'm sure the aesthetics of it are going to look fine when he's done with it. And my wife and I have no qualms with it. You can't even see it from the road right now with the growth that is around there. It's still hidden from the road. It's no way going to be an eyesore, and I'm sure he's going to make it look real nice when it's done. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. Any others wishing to make comment? We will close the public hearing. Elizabeth, would you like to speak to it first, or shall we entertain the applicant's opportunity to speak first?
Yeah, the applicant can go ahead. I'll finish up.
We have no screens.
You have no. Is it not working? Okay.
James, if you would like to address the board, feel free.
My name is James McLaughlin. This is my wife Presley. And here in regards to the variance application for my home at 5520 Chauncey. I'd like to start the discussion just by apologizing for starting construction prior to receiving necessary permits. Misinterpreted the township's ordinance on this and understand that beginning construction prior to permitting is not ideal. With that in mind, I think the variance is necessary for the following reasons. First off, the variance will allow me to preserve and enjoy a substantial property right similar to that possessed by other properties in the same zoning district and in the same vicinity. My property is almost entirely on a very steep slope with substantial elevation gains, which is very unusual for the area. This township defines steep as anything over a 10% grade, and most of my property is on a 35% grade. While most residents would be able to put a carport anywhere on their lot, I only have one flat area that can be safely accessed by car and foot. Additionally, in winter months, the extreme slope of my property makes it very dangerous to get in and out in two vehicles and into my home. My wife and daughter have slipped and fell multiple times getting in and out of the car in the winter. We feel that carport is the only way to solve this issue. Secondly, the variance will not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property and will not materially impair the intent and purpose of this ordinance. I believe the intent in this ordinance is to make sure that structures do not interfere with the road commission, make sure that structures are visually appealing to the neighborhood, and make sure that structures don't cause issues for neighboring properties. Carport's 31 feet removed from the right-of-way of the road commission. They've stated that I'm plenty far away from the property line for any potential road maintenance issues. Carport's designed to match the single slope architecture of my home, and it's built with high-grade wood and other premium materials. I think it's gonna look really nice. And it's barely visible from the road. The only neighboring property that can see it from their home is our neighbors Brett and Ellen, and they've been kind enough to join me here in support tonight. And then third, the need for this variance is not self-created. As I previously mentioned, the nature of this request is simply due to the extreme topography and slope on my parcel. Lastly, while other alternatives were considered, all other ideas presented serious practical difficulties, including preservation of the natural landscape and vegetation, drainage, emergency services access, utility locations, and appearance. So given the slope and the heavily wooded nature of the property, there really is no other feasible solution to this. So in summary, I think the variance is absolutely necessary to provide safe access to our home in winter months, and with that, be happy to take any of your questions.
Thank you. We'll allow you to return to your seat. We'll ask for the staff summary. We'll discuss the matter, and if there are any questions, we will let you know. Elizabeth, is there anything to add to what Mr. McLaughlin has stated?
Well, I think he gave a pretty good summary of what I had written in the staff report. A few things to note on the site. This parcel that the house is actually located on is not in our township. It's in Cannon Township. So it's a little bit of a tricky situation already. We view these lots for zoning purposes as a zoning lot of record, so we can more easily determine front yard setbacks and that sort of thing. The ordinance currently requires 60 feet between the edge of the road right-of-way and any accessory structures that are located in the front yard. That is challenging on this site due to the topography. There is an existing variance on the site to try to address some of these issues. And you'll see from the minutes back in 1993, they went back and forth with the applicant at the time about what the appropriate front yard setback was. I think if any of you have made it out there, the garage that they ended up building is fairly inaccessible from the home. To go down that steep slope and then back up the other steep slope to the house is challenging. I drove it and had a difficult time getting back down the driveway, backing up. And not impossible, not the worst we've ever seen by far, but definitely challenging. To traverse on foot would probably be even more challenging. So I think just based on the topography of the site and the need for covered parking in the winter, there is a need for a variance in this case. But I'm happy to take any questions or anything you got.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Mike, might you have any questions, comments, or discussion issues?
No, I don't have any specific questions this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Coleman?
I have no questions, other than to state that I did visit your property, so if you saw a strange white pickup truck there over the weekend, it was me. That's strange enough. It was, in my view, it was just a miss in 1993. Sorry to our predecessors. And quite frankly, it's real hard to see from the road. I have no issue with it. It's fine.
Carl?
I guess Elizabeth brought up a point. So we're being asked to approve a carport location in our township for a house in a different township. Okay,
That happened in 93 too,
We-
because we had gotten a notice on the variance and wrote a letter against it, because we just moved in, and Ron was going through, the previous owner, Lon Lemare, was going through the same thing, and he needed the township's approval because the lot line cuts through part of the front of it, comes down the street like in the middle, and then jers over towards where James lives, where Ron lived. And we did have runoff issues, because that was kind of fell through the cracks then. And we ended up spending 15 grand on runoff issues from the driveway previously, which are now fixed with the road commission's help. Yeah, you're right, something happened in 93. And I believe that the previous owner was actually thinking of putting it in where James put his carport in, was thinking of putting a carport in. I think Ron was gonna put the driveway there and couldn't, the garage, so he put it on the hill. Because of the shape of the lot.
I got a question for the applicant. What do you keep in the existing garage?
It's mostly full of tools. We have another car in there. I have an old truck that
Do so you don't use that garage for your main parking?
It depends. In summer months, we will use it because we can walk down the driveway and back up to the house. In the winter, it's just so, either can go cut across the land and go to the house, or go down the driveway and up the driveway. And it's just so slick that we don't use it for every day. We park right where the carport is, because then we don't have to walk on it.
Was the I'll call it the landscaping, the contour of the parcel that the house sits in configured that way when the house was built? Do you know that?
My understanding, so we haven't changed anything since we have lived there as far as the landscape. My understanding is the property has looked the same way since it was built. I don't know the timing of that.
Well, it just looks like the contours were adjusted to put the house in. And my thinking or my thought is, in a perfect situation, the carport should be, or could be, put right next to the house to eliminate the issue of having to go up those steps. That being said, what that does is that means from the road surface to a location for this carport is about a 30-foot plus incline of a driveway. Now, just looking at this map, I'm gonna say that's 30 feet and 150 feet, or give or take. Kerwin, what'd you say?
That's an accurate estimate,
Okay, so that's,
30 and 150.
yeah, 30 on 50, 30 on 150. Is a steep slope, but that eliminates the issue of having to go up and down the stairs. I don't know, I'm a little in between on this one. The ordinance that we have in effect for structures in front of the house is there for a particular reason, so they don't look cluttered and out of place. they already have one structure that's in front of the house, but it sits way off to the side. I don't think that is an issue, whereas this one here would be almost directly in front of the house. And that's what this ordinance is built to not allow. So I guess those are my comments.
Thank you, Carl. Robin?
Thank you, Carol. When you pose a statement in 1993 and now today to an engineer or an architect that these are extreme circumstances and these are the only places you can do something, well, this is the second time that those circumstances have claimed or have pushed a decision that this can only be in one place. A little bit of design, a little bit of contour relocation, similar to what Carl mentioned, I think would make a much more agreeable location for the carport, make it much more accessible, more easily to the house. However, the location that you've chosen is just a convenient place that's already there. So, you know, that we can't force you to go through a design process, but we can make comments about the decisions, and I think that there were other opportunities that could have been considered in order to better place the carport, not only for better meeting the ordinance, but also to better suit your needs, especially with your growing family. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Robin. To me, as this board, we have statutory, set by law, 5 standards that we need to evaluate. And I'm sure Elizabeth has gone over those with you, including the unique features, whether or not the item was self-created, unnecessarily burden substantial justice, and whether or not an ordinance amendment would more appropriately address the situation at hand. The staff has identified the route for variance as one avenue for this, and it's also been identified among the peers here that there might be a different opportunity that presents itself for citing this within the confines of the property and meeting the ordinance. And so it seems to be unresolved at this point, but there seems to be some opportunity to use the adjacent real estate that's available to cite the structure and meet the ordinance. And that is one of the priorities that we need to vet without question. And so with that, I'm literally on the fence because the neighbors show up and say, we really don't have a concern. A variance is a very big deal in that it runs with the land. And as Robin pointed out, this is the second time we've come to the same property with the same situation. And so that provides me more credence in we haven't demonstrated that the unique features are creating the practical difficulty that can't be solved but without a variance. So those are my thoughts, gentlemen, Elizabeth, applicant, and neighbors. Might we have any other discussion that needs to occur or should occur based on what we've heard?
I'd like to point out one thing, if I could.
Go ahead, Robin.
You go 150 foot past the location of this house, and there's another structure that's even closer to the road. That's a big white thing. That's a garage, and I haven't had time to look up that piece of property and see how that was constructed or if there's a variance on that. But with the location of the existing garage and the cadence of that just in the next lot down, this is not an egregious thing. I mean, this is a sensible location So I'm not totally against it, but as a designer, I know that care could have been taken to make a better solution and possibly less expensive.
Question maybe for you,
Sure.
Elizabeth, in the staff memo, item number 1, the comment, maximum grade for a new driveway is 10%.
Mhm.
That be taken to mean that if this structure was set 60 feet back from the road, a driveway would have to be placed such that slope didn't exceed 10% to get to that point 60 feet back from the right of way?
So that 10% applies to driveways over 125 feet in length because it's an emergency access ordinance. I put that in there to show what is kind of generally acceptable in terms of slope. If the driveway exceeded 125 feet in length, then our fire department would require a lot of grading so that they could reasonably access that structure in the case of a fire. And given the topography and the steep slopes of the area, and there is considerable drainage and stormwater issues already in the area, we would prefer not to see additional grading being done on site and in the area in general. I know Pete is handling quite a few stormwater issues out there, and they're only going to get worse. So that was staff's thought on the additional grading for other locations. Probably just isn't in the township's best interest.
Thank you.
I guess my final comment is, I go back to my very first comment. We're approving on a carport in our township for a house in a different township. That just doesn't set with me.
You would be surprised how much of that we have with all of our neighboring townships, Alpine, Algoma, take your pick. We have properties, yeah, and we've had to,
And I just don't like them.
yeah, we played that game around the township, but from my perspective, you know, without doing significant grading and doing some different things here, it's kind of pick a spot. Having been there, having looked at the property, I don't know that there's a better spot given what they have. I'll go back and say, probably done right in 1993, maybe we wouldn't be sitting here today entertaining it again, but we are where we are. And to Robin's point, there's other things in there, and then these are our rules, but yet the home's in a different township, to Carl's point. So, you know, what's Cannon's rules? We don't create some oddball situation out here either, so. I'll stop.
I'll entertain a motion. Public hearing is closed.
I will make a motion. I move to grant a 29-foot variance from the required minimum 60-foot front yard setback requirement to permit a 576-square-foot carport to be constructed 31 feet from the front property line at 5520 Chauncey Drive Northeast, based on the following findings of fact. 1, the subject site has unique and substandard features for a residential property. 2, the conditions of the site and development circumstances are not self-created. 3, granting the variance would allow the owner reasonable use of the property for a permitted purpose. 4, the variance would provide substantial justice to the property owner. 5, the nature of the request makes a text amendment undesirable. 6, the proposed variance request is supported for those reasons set forth by members of the Zoning Board of Appeals and members of the public, as reflected in the entire record of this matter, including the meetings.
Have support?
I'll support.
We have a motion, we have support. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Aye. The vote is a 3-2 in your favor. The motion carries.
Could you do a roll call? I didn't see who was.
All
Pro or
those,
against?
all those in the affirmative, Mr. Coleman?
Correct.
Correct.
Keen, no. Coster?
No.
Mike?
Correct.
On with our agenda as soon as I find mine.
You're all set. You're welcome to stay if you want, but if you don't, thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Staff comments.
We might have a meeting next month. I will keep you posted. I should know in the next week or so.
More deets, or do we have to wait until Thursday prior to find out the,
You're just gonna have to wait in suspense.
well, planning commission, appeal board members, Tom, any comments?
I don't have anything pertaining to the zoning board of appeals. I could go on about township business, but I won't bore you to death unless you have a question.
I have no additional comments. Thank you.
Mike?
No additional comments.
Carl?
I brought one up to Elizabeth on the way in. The work being done at Fox Motors on Jupiter and Plainfield seems to be a little more than cosmetic. At this point, they do not have a permit, do they?
They do, yeah.
Did get one?
They got a permit, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And we are,
When they first started, they did not have one. Yes.
Oh.
Kerwin and I both brought it up that they were doing substantial work, and I thought it was Peter that said, it's just cosmetic. Okay, if they do have a permit, then that's all said and fine.
they do have a permit, and we did negotiate with them the addition of green space. I heard your comment earlier, Kerwin. So hopefully there'll be additional greenscape and landscaping in the front there.
I stuck my nose over the hedge, literally, on Thursday and said, when I talked to Peter, he's got to call me on another issue. I should mention that their stormwater is going to blast through the landscaping and run down the driveway into the street where there are no storm sewers. Hopefully, he was able to communicate that message to them, or their wizards of engineers are smart enough to know that water doesn't always necessarily flow downhill, just downhill. Sometimes it goes uphill when you get it going fast enough.
Yep.
Which is what will happen. So we'll let those design professionals deal with their arrogance, oversight as it plays out. I have no comments, nothing further. Not quite as good as Mr. Coleman's best at 22 minutes, but with that, I think we should adjourn.
Stall.